many times you've been arrested?
I don't have an actual, factual number.
And how did you tell his mom that her son was gone?
So it's just competitive energy and things that you say about other artists while you're in hip-hop culture.
One could watch this and think that you really hate because of the things that you post on Instagram.
And I die in the street about this shit, man. This shit dead serious to me. And then when I do rap shit, man, this shit is full of this type.
50 Cent leaks clips of T.I. documentary, and it's devastating.
Recognize who that is?
Yeah, that's Phil. Oh, that's his body. I felt that, you know, all of those rounds were fired for me, you know.
What happens when the internet's most notorious troll stops trolling and actually pulls the trigger? On March 5th, 2026, 50 Cent did just that, posting, then quickly deleting an Instagram screenshot with a single headline, 50 Cent reportedly developing surviving T.I. and Tiny documentary. That one post didn't just make waves, it shook the entire rap industry to its core. This wasn't a meme, a joke, or a casual jab. It was a warning, calculated and deliberate. To understand why that deleted screenshot caused such a stir, you have to go back to the very first moment that cracked open this feud. Every move, every word, every headline since then has been part of a carefully orchestrated escalation, setting the stage for a showdown that blurred the lines between music, media, and personal vendetta. That single post wasn't just news, it was a statement, and everyone watching knew it.
50 Cent and T.I. is back at it. 50 Cent jumped out there. He let him know that he's putting out a documentary surviving T.I. and Tiny. Man, listen to this. I'm gonna play where T.I. told 50 that he was getting ready to do the same thing to him. And then now 50 announced that he did it. We already know 50 know how to do.
What began as a celebration quickly spiraled into chaos. T.I. and 50 Cent were in discussions for a Vazoo's Battle, the iconic stage where rap legends go catalogue to catalogue, bar for bar. T.I. had described the event publicly as a moment of mutual respect, a chance to honor each other's legacy. Fans had been dreaming about this for years. Two of the most decorated rappers of their generation finally sharing a room, celebrating everything they'd built. What should have been a historic celebratory moment instead set the stage for one of the most intense and publicized conflicts in hip-hop history.
Okay, so first, like, you know, it was really about celebrating each other's catalog. Me and this nigga talk back there, bro. This nigga, I ain't just called a nigga out the blue. Me and this nigga talk back there.
You talking about you were 50?
Yeah, man, we talk about this shit, man. This shit just come out of nowhere.
But then, true to form, 50 Cent flipped the script like only he can. He went into full denial mode, claiming no agreement had ever existed, playing completely oblivious in interviews and acting as if the whole Vazoo's idea was something he'd just stumbled onto. And just when people thought he might let things cool, he publicly dismissed T.I. with a nickname that stung, King Rat. In hip-hop culture, that's not casual shade, it's a full-blown accusation of snitching, the ultimate label that can haunt someone in the streets. With that move, 50 didn't just push back, he drew a line in the sand, telling T.I. in no uncertain terms to keep his name out of his mouth, the subtlety was gone. The message was raw, public, and impossible to ignore.
Because if you're telling, you can't even look forward to going home.
It's just gonna be hell.
Where you going after you get out? The neighborhood ain't accepting that. You bitch ass nigga, we heard you's a rat. Look, even for me personally, my character, they would try to attack my character. They'll say he a rat or he just a snap.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is ask him who I told him.
T.I.'s anger didn't stay behind closed doors, it spilled into the public sphere, raw and unfiltered. On the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast, he said exactly what he felt, letting the world hear it. We talked about this. We said what we were gonna do. When I jumped out there, he acted like he ain't know what was going on. The sense of betrayal was loud, unmistakable, and on full display. And the timing couldn't have made it sting more. T.I.'s single, Let Him Know, had just hit #1 on urban radio and was making waves on the mainstream top 40. He was experiencing a career resurgence, reminding everyone why he mattered. And then 50 Cent's move hit like a shadow over it all. Just when momentum was on his side, the disruption arrived, seeding doubt and conversation in a way that threatened to derail the very narrative T.I. was trying to rebuild. But that initial social media call-out, that was only the beginning. 50 Cent wasn't stopping with bars or comments. He was escalating to a level that made it clear this was no longer about music. He returned to his platform of choice, Instagram, the stage he's honed for 2 decades, and posted an unflattering photo of T.I.'s wife, Tamika "Tiny" Harris. The caption told T.I. to keep his name out of 50's mouth. But the real blow wasn't in the words. By bringing Tiny into it, 50 turned the conflict into a public, family-wide showdown. The message was unmistakable. This wasn't just a rap beef anymore. Millions were watching, and now the entire Harris family was in the crosshairs.
At this point, 50 Cent should literally rent a wife and kids and have them make diss responses. And the fact that he would actually have to rent a woman and children to like him and to respond on his behalf for T.I. and Tiny's whole family is telling.
I wasn't going to absorb that quietly. He responded, "The only way a rapper of his caliber knows how, through the music and through it fast." He dropped several diss tracks in quick succession, including War and The Right One, and he came loaded. On The Right One, he called 50 a small man in a big shell, a line designed to cut straight at the ego of a man who has built his entire brand on dominance and bravado.
That's when you got the right one. And be honest with y'all, man, T.I.'s a lyricist, man. T.I. was going. He was barring up on this one. He was barring up, you know what I'm saying? He brought up the Jadakiss situation, you know, when 50 and Jada went at it. Fat Joe, of course, Murder Inc. We all know how historic that battle is to hip hop. You know, the whole house situation, you know, with the burned down house, that whole situation, you know, with you mad at Puff because he was going at your baby mom. So yeah, he was definitely throwing some shots at 50. And to me, at a point, and like I said, I'm a fan of both T.I. and 50 Cent. It gets to a point with like the memes and stuff like that, like, all right, where that's limit, in my personal opinion, man. It's time to bar up.
The tension exploded when T.I. fired back, dropping a line that the internet couldn't stop talking about, calling 50 Cent a 50 dispatcher. That wasn't just clever wordplay, it was a direct claim that 50 had been cooperating with federal authorities, and T.I. even hinted he had actual paperwork from inmates with 50's name on it. This wasn't a bar to spit over a beat, it was an accusation with weight, the kind that travels far beyond streams and social media feeds. It planted a seed that people weren't just going to scroll past, and just when it seemed like the heat couldn't rise any higher, the Harris family mobilized. T.I.'s sons, King Harris and Damani, jumped into the fray, dropping their own disses aimed squarely at 50 Cent. It transformed what started as a feud between two artists into a full-scale family war, sending a clear message. This wasn't just personal, this was organized, and everyone watching knew it. The stakes had shifted, and the entire hip-hop community was now on edge, waiting to see who would move next.
I treated people how they treated us. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't nothing that I wanted to do, it was just something that just had to be done.
Domani, also you dropped a record. It felt more, did you get any inspiration from, like, when I heard it for the first time, it reminded me of like Meet the Grams?
I would say, man, I just have questions. I just genuinely have questions. And I'm an understanding individual, and I know the reason people do certain things, it probably stem from how they grew up, how they was raised, even me.
This had clearly moved past the stage of two rappers throwing shots at each other. What people were watching now felt bigger, more organized, more serious. It wasn't just T.I. responding as an artist anymore, it felt like a full family front pushing back. And usually in this industry, that kind of united response is where things start cooling down. But this situation didn't follow that pattern, because by that point, 50 Cent wasn't even playing the same game anymore. He had already stepped into something far more impactful than captions or diss tracks, and the industry could feel it. To really understand why that one screenshot shook everything, you have to look at what 50 had just pulled off right before this. Because that moment didn't come out of nowhere, it came right after a move that changed how power works in hip-hop media. At the end of 2025, 50 Cent was attached as an executive producer to The Reckoning, a Netflix documentary series centered around Sean Diddy Combs. And the moment it dropped, it hit like a shockwave. The series immediately climbed to the #1 spot, pulling massive attention as it explored years of allegations and long-rumored industry behavior that had never really been presented on that scale before. This wasn't gossip anymore, it was packaged, structured, and delivered to a global audience in a way that felt impossible to ignore. Now sure, Netflix later clarified that 50 didn't have full creative control and that participants weren't paid, but none of that really changed how the public reacted. Because at the end of the day, people don't remember disclaimers, they remember impact. And the impact this had on Diddy's public image was undeniable. Conversations shifted overnight. Perception changed. And that's when people started realizing something new. This wasn't just influence anymore. This was leverage. What 50 proved in that moment was something the industry hadn't fully caught up to yet. A documentary can hit harder than a diss track ever could. Songs trend and fade. Lawsuits drag on and lose attention. Social media posts come and go, but a documentary? That stays. It sits on platforms, gets recommended, reshared, revisited, and every time someone clicks play, the narrative starts all over again. So when that now deleted post about a potential T.I. documentary surfaced, it landed very differently. The caption alone was enough to stop people mid-scroll. Remember how quiet I got before the Diddy doc? Dame thought I wasn't coming. That wasn't a random statement. It felt like a reminder, almost a warning. He wasn't saying he'd respond with music, he was suggesting something much bigger. The same blueprint, the same strategy. Take the story, build it out, put it on a platform, and let it speak for itself. And then there was the title he attached to it, Surviving T.I. and Tiny. That's what really made people pause. Because anyone who had been following the headlines over the past few years instantly understood the weight behind that phrasing. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't accidental. It was designed to connect directly to everything that had already been said, reported, and debated, and to repackage it in a way that could bring it all back to the surface again, stronger than before.
But now, since 50 posted that he's doing the documentary, maybe you believe him. He just posted it this morning. But anybody in the loop knows that T.I. and Tiny have had several allegations of SA.
This wasn't being framed as just another quick-hit expose, it was shaping up to be something much more deliberate. The rumored documentary was said to follow the same blueprint as the Reckoning-style format, the kind designed to dig up past allegations and repackage them into a long-form narrative that keeps resurfacing again and again. And according to whispers circulating at the time, the focus would be on bringing the assault allegations against T.I. and Tiny back into the spotlight right at a moment when their public image had the most to lose. Nothing officially confirmed, nothing formally announced, but in this space, the rumor alone can hit just as hard as the release itself. And that's where things start to feel calculated. Gossip journalist Tasha K, someone who's built a reputation around being right in the middle of messy celebrity situations, claimed she had inside information from people close to 50's camp, suggesting the project was already moving behind the scenes. Now, whether that's true or not is still up in the air. But here's the reality. In the world of hip-hop drama, you don't always need proof to create impact. The conversation itself becomes the story, and once it starts spreading, it's almost impossible to contain. That's exactly why that now deleted post hit the way it did. It wasn't random, it was strategic. Dropped at peak engagement hours, just long enough for screenshots to flood every corner of the internet, headlines to start forming, and speculation to spiral. And then, just like that, it was gone. But by that point, it didn't need to stay up. The damage was already done. The internet had done what it always does: amplify, exaggerate, and lock the narrative into place before anyone could slow it down. And the caption? That's where it got even more direct. 50 didn't just hint he took a clear shot at T.I.'s entire rollout, saying, "I hope this doesn't mess up your promo tour. They're going to ask about your 20 assault cases." That wasn't just a jab, it was a warning, because at that moment, T.I. was gearing up for what was supposed to be his final chapter. Kill the King wasn't just another album, it was positioned as a legacy piece, the closing statement of a career that helped define Southern rap. Every interview was supposed to celebrate that journey. But now, there was a real threat that every question would shift away from music and straight into controversy. And here's where the situation becomes even more complicated. Because the legal history behind these allegations isn't simple. It's messy, layered, and constantly being pulled in different directions, depending on who's telling the story. Back in March 2021, attorney Tyrone A. Blackburn held a press conference that sent shockwaves through the industry. He claimed that over 30 women had come forward with serious accusations against T.I. and Tiny allegations that included forced drug use, kidnapping, sexual assault, and intimidation. According to him, this wasn't a one-time situation, but a pattern that allegedly stretched across more than a decade and multiple states. The claims were detailed, intense, and impossible to ignore, and for weeks, they dominated headlines. But at the same time, they also opened the door to a flood of conflicting narratives, denials, legal pushback, and questions about what could actually be proven. And that's the space where this entire situation still lives today, caught somewhere between allegation, legal limitation, and public perception, with someone like 50 Cent now potentially stepping in to reshape how that story gets told moving forward.
It's already been known that there are 30 women, at least, that have had allegations of being kidnapped, drugged, raped. Y'all know what those words mean. And 50 Cent is saying he got 20 of them. And this surviving T.I. and Tiny coming.
The LAPD didn't just brush this off, they actually opened a full investigation, putting real time and resources into reviewing the allegations, even going as far as interviewing potential witnesses. But after digging through everything, they ultimately decided not to move forward with criminal charges. The key reason wasn't a lack of seriousness, it was timing. Too much time had passed, and legally, that shut the door. And here's where things get complicated. That decision wasn't a statement of innocence. It simply meant the system couldn't act anymore. The window had closed, and with it, any chance of a criminal case moving forward. But that wasn't the end of it. On the civil side, things kept dragging out for much longer, keeping the situation alive in headlines and conversations. Then, in August 2024, a major shift happened. A federal judge dismissed one of the most high-profile civil lawsuits tied to the case. T.I. and Tiny's legal team wasted no time making their stance clear, saying the court found no valid claims against them. And from day one, they've stayed locked into that same message. These accusations are false, and they're not backing down. Legally speaking, the outcomes leaned in their favor: no criminal charges, dismissed civil claims, and a record that offers them protection in court. But here's the part that really changes everything. The courtroom isn't the only battlefield anymore. Because while all of this was playing out legally, 50 Cent was operating in a completely different arena, one where perception matters more than paperwork. And if there's one thing 50 has proven over the years, it's that he knows exactly how to control that space. Curtis Jackson didn't just stumble into becoming 50 Cent, every phase of his career has been calculated. From tearing people down with diss tracks in the early 2000s, to dominating social media in the 2010s with perfectly timed posts, memes, and captions that could embarrass someone in seconds, he's always been ahead of the game. But by the mid-2020s, he took it to another level entirely. And this is where things start getting serious. The Diddy documentary was the clearest example yet of how far 50 has evolved. This wasn't just online trolling anymore, this was long-form storytelling with real reach. A project tied to Netflix doesn't just disappear after a week, it sits there, constantly being pushed to new viewers, shaping opinions over time. And even when Netflix clarified that 50 didn't have full creative control, it didn't really matter. The impact had already landed. And then came the part that made people pause. 50 revealed there were around 140 hours of unseen footage still sitting in the vault, openly hinting that he could drop it anytime, anywhere, even on YouTube. No filters, no approvals. Just straight to the public. And that didn't sound like a joke, it sounded like a warning. Now here's where the pressure really builds. Because suddenly, that same strategy seems to be turning toward T.I. And this isn't like an old school rap beef where shots are thrown in songs and eventually fade out. This is something that sticks. A diss track might trend for a moment, but a documentary? That lives forever. It becomes searchable, clickable, and permanently tied to your name. And 50 Cent understands that better than anyone. Which raises the bigger question, what does T.I. even do in a situation like this? Because right now, T.I. is caught in a position no artist wants to be in. On one side, he's trying to solidify his legacy, a career that helped shape Atlanta's rise and laid the foundation for trap music as the world knows it today. Kill the King was supposed to be that final chapter, a victory lap after decades in the game. But instead of celebration, every conversation around it feels overshadowed, and that shadow has a very specific name attached to it. And 50 didn't stop at just the idea of a documentary. He brought it straight into the music. On the Power Origins theme, he dropped a line that directly referenced the allegations surrounding T.I. and Tiny, making sure the controversy stays alive in every discussion, every comment section, every headline. And that's the strategy. Keep it circulating, keep it visible, keep it impossible to ignore. Whether the documentary is officially confirmed or not almost doesn't even matter at this point. Because 50 has built something most people never achieve the kind of credibility where even his hints feel real. The industry might have laughed before, but now nobody's laughing. So now everything comes down to one uncomfortable question: is 50 Cent exposing truths that the legal system couldn't fully address, or is this something more personal? A calculated move driven by old tensions, using serious allegations as fuel in a much bigger war? Because the line between accountability and revenge is starting to blur, and depending on which side of that line this falls on, T.I.'s legacy could be affected in ways no courtroom ever could.